Fog Entertainment back again with another video, and this time we're going to be looking at a different sort of video, and it's a factual history review here, because we've also, I say that it is a TV show, it is an actual series that got brought out. It is more of a documentary rather than an actual series, but you know what, we review all kinds here on Fog Entertainment, so it's as simple as that. But we are looking at the greatest coloured offence in World War II history. Well, it's the greatest offence, but they've been restored in colour. And I actually started, what was the first episode I watched? I think the first episode I watched was, it was to do with a concentration camp one, but I believe it was like episode 8, but it really intrigued me, so I went back to episode 1 and started watching. I haven't finished it, but I'm going to review every episode. But episode 1 is titled Blitzkrieg, and if you're wondering what that is referring to, it's basically a tactic in war. So going to episode 1, you would assume, right, that's going to be the beginning of the war. And yes, it basically just gives you an insight about what happened. We get like 10 minutes explaining what happened in World War One. Of course, the Germans won, but the Germans weren't as bad in World War One as what they were in World War Two. Is basically what you need to understand here. And basically, it shows you how over a number of years since the end of 1918. Like the Treaty of Versailles in 19, we go forward to like your 1930s. Hitler becomes in power, becomes the Führer. He's the Chancellor and he's the top man. He's the Führer. And then we get closer to the war. Basically, it goes on to talk about like the treatment of the Jews and all that stuff. But that happens. That more happens in depth later on in the episodes, because it just pinpoints the episodes. Like in terms of the episodes, I'll talk about a few here quickly. You've got this one. You've Pearl Harbor. You've D-Day. You've like the Battle of the Bulge, is it? I believe Battle of the Bulge. You've Hiroshima as an episode. I haven't watched that one. I'm intrigued to watch that one. So this was a lot of action. But basically, what it boils down to, it talks about how Hitler signed all these agreements, and then he has a meeting with Stalin, and this basically what puts the war into overdrive. But this is a very interesting thing, because everyone knows the Germans invaded Poland in 1939. But do they also know that the Soviet Union invaded Poland in 1939? I never knew this. I do know my history. There is some retards out there that couldn't even tell you the dates that the wars took place in. Like, I understand if you don't know, wars like the Battle of Hastings and all that shit. I know it was 1066, but if you don't know that, fair enough, man, because it was like 1,000 years ago, literally. So, this stuff should be edged in your head. The dates should be there. You're like, the moon landed 1969, September 11th, 2001. You should remember those sort of dates. That's just my opinion, but yeah. But of course, Hitler and Stalin meet here. They sign a treaty, basically to not attack each other. That later ends up in smoke, because we have the Battle of Stalingrad, and basically, of course, the Germans invade Russia, and they actually get pretty far. But we'll get to that a wee bit later on in these reviews. But basically, this episode is centralised around the invasion of Poland, basically the invasion of Belgium, the invasion of the Holland, the invasion of all these countries that are close to Germany. You've got your Czechoslovakias, you've got, Austria, Hungary, all these countries that not many of them put up a fight in good or bad ways. Some of them just gave up, and some of them were like, fuck it, we'll join the Axis. All that shit. But at the end of the day, basically, it just shows you, it showed you the Germans against the Polish. Like, the Polish were on horses. Like, and this is 1939. Like, you'd expect some form of heavy artillery. Later into the war, when the German resources are pretty low, they do use horses. But, like, all the Poles had here was horses, which I think is just a bit surreal. Like, if you were to ask me, did the Polish have any tanks in World War II? You'd be like, sure they would have. But here it's like, nope, they just had Captain Dandy running about the pitch. But, I believe the invasion of Poland, it didn't take the Germans too long. It took them about a month to completely take Poland. And then eventually, they take Denmark, they take Norway, they take all these countries. And I believe by like 1940, is it 1941? Before 1941, that's before like the whole Russian stuff. But here, like, they've literally built a wall from the bottom of France, and where it borders Spain, right up around to Russia, at the top of like Finland, Norway, Denmark, up there past the Scandinavian countries, Sweden. And it's like, at this point, you must be thinking, from a British perspective, it's all over. Like the war. Like, Pearl Harbor, as bad as Pearl Harbor was, and I'm skipping my head here, if Pearl Harbor doesn't happen, and they talk about this quite a lot in the actual review, if Pearl Harbor doesn't happen, you know, did the Nazis win? I mean, I think the Nazis would have won if they actually, you know, didn't take too much on at a time. But you know what, history happens for a reason, and it's so interesting seeing all this go down, this Blitzkrieg, you know, and all these attacks and seeing how they work, and absolutely mad. We saw Winston Churchill in it talking about thank God for the French army, but you know what, guys? The French army absolutely collapsed here. See, as soon as the Germans got into France, they retreated to the south of France because they didn't want to damage their capital city, Paris. And that, in my opinion, is fucking embarrassing, right? We are never going to see a world war again. It just wouldn't happen. This, it shows you, man, whatever was luck, you know, like, but see now, the amount of technology, tracking, all that stuff, you're never going to see it to this degree. You know, I know currently in the world we have Russia and Ukraine, but that's nowhere near the levels of this, if we're being perfectly honest. And aye, guys, for episode 1, very intrigued, and at this point, the Nazis are taking over. But anyway, guys, that'll do it for this review, episode 1. In terms of a rating out of 10, I am going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. Got me intrigued, and I watched a hell of a lot more of it.